Is there any physical evidence
that indicates it may very well be the burial cloth of Jesus? In fact,
They still cannot figure out.
when you come face to face with this image,
I'm very skeptical of that stuff.
Is there any physical evidence? Sometimes I've seen reports that maybe Jesus's face is showing up on a cloth.
Oh, the Shroud of Turin.
well, the Shroud of Turin is a very fascinating topic.
I've
There's
been
been
looking-
new
have you been looking
research
at it?
into
Yes, John Campbell, Dr.
Yeah,
John Campbell.
There's some really powerful new analysis of the Shroud that indicates it may very well be the burial cloth of Jesus. In fact, many years ago, they did a study of it, and they took a piece of it, and they did radiocarbon dating, and they said, oh, it dates back to the Middle Ages, so this is a forgery. Well, they had taken, by mistake, threads that were a part of a patch that was added in the Middle Ages.
Because it was burned. If
Yeah,
you look
got
at
burned.
it, you can see the burn marks.
Yeah.
It was in a fire in Turin
Right.
in the 1500s.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
And what happened is it got burned. Well, nuns took it and sewed patches of cloth on to piece it back together.
So they accidentally dated that. But when they date it, there is, and I'm not an expert on it, but Dr. Jeremiah Johnston and several others are writing books and doing lectures on it now. There's a lot of new stuff coming out on the Shroud that really does suggest. By the way, one of the most powerful moments I've ever had was there was a guy, and I met him. I used to do a TV show, and I had him as a guest. He was the official photographer of the Shroud of Turin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a Jewish guy, Barry Schwartz, I think his name. And he made several life-size, actual-size copies of the photo of the Shroud. And I met a guy who has one. He has a traveling exhibit that he has. It was out east. And so he said, do you want to see it? And I said, yes. I'm telling you, when you come face to face with this image and you contemplate the possibility that is an image of my Jesus, it's pretty overwhelming. It is pretty overwhelming. But
well, and so, some of the evidence now, like when they studied it, they still cannot figure out what put
mechanism,
because the image is a what do you
it's like
call
an
it?
X-ray kind of thing.
Well, it is. It's just on the outside of it, but it's a what do you call it in a film, in the old film where it's a negative.
Yeah.
It's a negative
right.
on the cloth.
Yeah.
And so you actually have to flip it basically, make dark light and light dark. But they do not know what the mechanism is that burned the image on there. There's nothing we have.
Serious?
No.
Yeah.
No. And when they've done even AI 3-dimensional reconstruction, because the data in the cloth is 3-dimensional. It's 3-dimensional information. In other words, it somehow came off an actual body to put 3-dimensional spatial information in the cloth in some kind of way we don't know. It's not dye, it's not just radiation, it's something else, and they don't know what it is. So here's a little funny thing, fascinating thing. Heidi, who I told you about, the Jewish girl who met Jesus in her near-death experience, we're friends. She texted me when she saw that 3-dimensional image. That's him.
Oh, wow.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's pretty good. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think they found
Because she said his nose was longer than I thought, and it was a little crooked,
interesting.
like it had been broken.
Wow. That's fascinating. Didn't they find some pollen in the shroud that they could trace back to first century Jerusalem?
I don't know about that.
I think that's true. Anyway, it'd be great to have an expert on who could really.
Dr. John Campbell did some. I saw some stuff he did.
Yeah. Jeremiah Johnston is another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other physical type stuff?
Like that?
Yeah, like that.
No, there's a lot of fraudulent stuff.
Okay.
A lot of fraudulent. There's a piece of the cross. You can buy it for $1,500.
There is, yeah. And that stuff, that bothers me.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, even near-death experiences. I was telling you, I'm doing more research. I continue to do research, and I think, some of these, I'm hearing them. I think it's AI. I think they're just saying to AI, make up a near-death experience and have Jesus say this or that or the other, and we're just going to make a lot of money off people who believe anything.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, if there aren't names attached and it's not videotaped and it's just, I'm very skeptical of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's another species of evidence, not physical evidence, but interesting, about the darkness that fell over the earth at the time of the crucifixion. The Bible says the earth went dark for a period of time. And I'm thinking, when I'm reading this for the first time.
No, specifically from the 6th to the 9th hour.
Right. So, yeah, exactly.
It says those 3 hours it was dark.
Right. And I'm
As
reading
Jesus
this
is being
thinking,
crucified.
Wouldn't somebody have noticed this? Wouldn't somebody else have written something about this if the earth actually went dark during that time period? Well, there was a guy named Thales who was a historian who wrote a history of the Eastern Mediterranean world in about 50 AD, which is shortly after
The Roman historian.
Roman, that's right. And his works have been lost, but in the year 221, a guy named Julius Africanus had a copy of what he wrote, and he was kind of responding to it and said, oh yeah, Thales says that the darkness was as a result of an eclipse.
Of the sun.
Which we knew it couldn't have been because of the timing of the
Because it was the Passover when he was crucified, and Passover is always a full moon.
Full moon.
That's how they know it's time for Passover. It's not our calendar, it's a full moon.
So there you have it.
You can't have a eclipse of the sun during a full moon.
Right. So there you have a report by a Roman scholar and historian that is corroborating a claim in the scriptures that many people would read and say, that can't be true.
And there were other extra biblical sources that also talked about
actually footnoted in my
darkness.
book, Case for Christ.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really
There's
is.
so much.
Yeah.
There's so much. And I think that's where, if people are willing to really stay open-minded enough to really seek with an open mind, with an open heart, they'll find. But then again, that's not the point. At the end of the day, the point is, do you want a relationship with your creator?
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.